Professor, the text we're examining today, Ibn Rushd's Fasl al-Maqal, opens with a truly audacious claim. The philosopher argues that Sharia, Islamic law, not only permits but commands the study of philosophy and the sciences of logic. Isn't this a radical, even provocative stance to take in an era when philosophy was often viewed with suspicion, if not outright as a threat to faith?
That is a very pertinent question that cuts to the core of Ibn Rushd's thesis. His argument is not so much a provocation as it is a logical and theological deduction. He doesn't start from a position external to Islam to justify philosophy. Rather, he roots the necessity of philosophy within Sharia itself. For him, Sharia explicitly encourages the observation of existent things, the contemplation of creation in order to better know the Creator. He cites Quranic verses such as, "Take admonition, O ye who have vision, fa'tabiru ya ulil absar," which he interprets as a direct command to use reason and logical deduction, what he calls qiyas aqli, to comprehend the world. Philosophy, in its essence, is nothing other than this methodical and rigorous observation of existence and the inference of their maker. Therefore, far from being a marginal activity, it is a religious imperative for anyone who wishes to achieve the most perfect knowledge of God.
But this very process can lead to conclusions that, at first glance, appear to contradict sacred texts. Ibn Rushd himself acknowledges this risk. How can a thinker like him reconcile truths derived from philosophical reason with truths revealed by Sharia, especially when their literal interpretations diverge? Is he not, in effect, risking the undermining of the sacred text's authority?
This is a crucial point of his work, and his response is of great subtlety. It's not about denying the text, but about understanding that it has multiple layers of meaning. He relies on the fact that the Arabic language, and more specifically the Quran, utilizes metaphor and analogy. Jurists themselves, he argues, practice ta'wil to resolve apparent contradictions in legal matters. However, philosophers, masters of certain demonstration, are even more qualified to do so, because their method is more rigorous than the mere qiyas jani, the probable deduction of the jurists.
It is precisely on this question of interpretation and the limits of ta'wil that Ibn Rushd enters into direct conflict with figures like Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali even issued a takfir, a declaration of heresy, against philosophers like Ibn Sina, notably on fundamental issues such as the eternity of the world, God's knowledge of particulars, or the resurrection of bodies. How does Ibn Rushd respond to these very serious accusations?
Is this not an irreconcilable fissure between philosophy and theology? Ibn Rushd categorically rejects al-Ghazali's takfir, considering it erroneous and dangerous. He first asserts that al-Ghazali fundamentally misunderstood the philosopher's positions. For instance, regarding God's knowledge of juz'iyat, particulars, Ibn Rushd explains that philosophers do not deny that God knows everything, but they affirm that his mode of knowledge is radically different from ours. Our knowledge of particulars is caused by the known objects. It is mutable. Divine knowledge, however, is the cause of the existence of particulars and is eternal and immutable. To conflate these two modes of knowledge for Ibn Rushd is a profound misunderstanding. Secondly, on the eternity of the world, he contends that the disagreement is often semantic. He identifies three categories of existence and demonstrates that the creation and eternity of the world, as conceived by philosophers, lies somewhere between creation in the strict theological sense and divine eternity, and are not directly opposed to the views of theologians who themselves practice ta'wil on certain verses describing creation. Finally, Ibn Rushd insists that it is impossible to achieve yaqini consensus, absolute certainty, on purely theoretical and interpretive matters.
This leads us to a very delicate question, the distinction between the intellectual elite and the common people. Ibn Rushd strongly insists that complex, allegorical interpretations should not be revealed to the general public. Is this not a form of intellectual elitism, even condescension towards the common person? Why hide a part of the truth if it is indeed the truth?
This is a crucial and often misunderstood point about Ibn Rushd, one that is motivated not by elitism, but by profound pastoral wisdom and a deep understanding of varying human cognitive capacities.
He explains that people are divided into 3 categories regarding their ability to receive truth: rhetoricians, the general public, dialecticians, and demonstrators, the philosophers. The Quran itself, he states, employs all 3 methods of persuasion. Revealing complex ta'wilats, especially demonstrative interpretations, to those who are not equipped to understand them is exceedingly dangerous.
So, if complex interpretations must be reserved for the elite, and the public dissemination of these ta'wilat is so dangerous, what then is the path Ibn Rushd proposes for harmonizing wisdom, or philosophy, and sharia? How can intellectual and religious unity be achieved, and the divisions he decries be avoided?
His solution is to return to the method of the Quran itself. The Holy Book, according to Ibn Rushd, offers a wisdom that addresses all levels of intellect.
For the Ahl al-Burhan, the philosophers, the duty is to continue the search for truth through demonstration and to practice ta'wil when reason demands it, but by consigning these interpretations only to philosophical texts inaccessible to the common person. The general public, for its part, must adhere to the apparent meaning of the texts, which is amply sufficient for their faith and moral guidance. Ibn Rushd views philosophy as Sharia's milk sister, and discord between them as a betrayal of their essential kinship. Unity is achieved by acknowledging different cognitive capacities, respecting each person's limits, and avoiding unnecessary polemics that divert from the primary objective of religion, the knowledge of God and the performance of righteous actions, leading to eternal happiness. He calls for an intellectual reform where everyone remains in their proper place and contributes to overall harmony.
Professor, towards the end of Fasl al-Maqal, Ibn Rushd delves into a very specific and abstract philosophical problem, the question of divine knowledge of particulars. He poses a profound dilemma. If God knows things before they exist, and they change when they do exist, does this imply a change in divine knowledge? He critiques al-Ghazali's solution and proposes his own.
Absolutely. This is a perfect illustration of Ibn Rushd's capacity for profound metaphysical analysis. The dilemma is this: if God's knowledge is eternal and immutable, how can he know the particular changing events that occur in time? If his knowledge changes with the appearance of each new event, that would imply a change within him, which is incompatible with the eternal divine nature. But if his knowledge does not change, how could he be informed of events at the moment they occur? Al-Ghazali had attempted to resolve this by stating that divine knowledge is relative to things, but does not change in itself. In the same way an object can change its relation from on the right to on the left without the object itself changing. Ibn Rushd critiques this analogy by showing that the relation itself is an entity that changes. Ibn Rushd's solution, remarkably elegant, lies in the radical distinction between divine knowledge and human knowledge. Our knowledge is affected by the known object. The object is the cause of our knowledge. For example, I only know it's raining after I've seen or felt the rain. My knowledge is posterior to and dependent on the existent. God's knowledge, by contrast, is not affected by existence. It is their cause. Things are not known by him because they exist because he knows them.
Therefore, the occurrence of a new event does not signify a change in his knowledge, because his knowledge is the primary and eternal source of that event, not its consequence. He does not know particulars as we know them, with the conditions of time and space that characterize our perception, but he knows them by a mode of knowledge unique to him, which transcends the concept of particular or universal as we understand it. This represents the highest degree of tanziyah, or divine transcendence. It is a profound wisdom that seeks to preserve the purity of the divine conception while affirming his omnipotence and omniscience.
Professor, this deep dive into Ibn Rushd's texts has been truly fascinating. Your analysis illuminates not only the thought of this intellectual giant, but also the eternal challenges of reconciling reason and faith. To conclude, what message, what primary wisdom would you take from Fasl al-Maqal for our own era, where tensions between different worldviews are still very much present?
The most powerful and timeless message of Fasl al-Maqal is, I believe, the imperative of intellect and reason in the service of truth, anchored within an ethical and religious framework. Ibn Rushd reminds us that the pursuit of truth is a divine obligation, and that philosophy, far from being a sterile amusement or a threat, is a noble and necessary path to deepen our knowledge of God and His creation. Professor, thank you immensely for this profound and illuminating analysis. It has been a privilege to have you decipher a text of such importance and complexity. To our listeners, thank you for joining us in this captivating discussion. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like and a comment, and turn on notifications to be notified of our next podcasts.